Before I start talking about this anime, you should keep in mind that this was made when episode 17 was about to be released. So with that out of the way, in case you didn't know, Assassination Classroom is an anime based off a manga that's about students trying to kill a super destructive being that looks like an octopus, who just so happens to be their teacher for a bounty of 10 billion yen. Obviously, from my summary of this series, the anime sounds really ridiculous, but really it's supposed to be. After all, it is an action comedy. Although despite the anime's odd premise, the series still is able to bring out quite a lot of emotional and suspenseful moments throughout the manga, which was represented by a pretty faithful anime adaptation. Well, at least the first season anyway. The second season, on the other hand, not so much. Why, you may ask? Well, let me explain. It was announced that the anime would adapt the rest of the manga that the first season did not cover in 25 episodes, which already tells you that the second season is going to have problems. Because the first season, with its 22 episodes, was only able to adapt 73 manga chapters, even though it still skipped a few chapters, and the fact that there was still 108 chapters left to adapt to anime, obviously a lot of the manga has to be cut out in order to fit one season, which really is a terrible idea because Assassination Classroom is a manga that likes to take its time with every chapter. Which means that when they do try to speed up the manga's story arcs in the anime, they become less memorable and feel more rushed simply because they were not supposed to be as short as the anime makes it. One example of this is shown during one of the best story arcs in the manga, which would be the backstory of Kuro Sensei, which is a huge mystery that both the manga and anime has been teasing for the entire story. But due to the anime being compressed so much, they have to replace some of Kuro Sensei's backstory with a terribly boring narration that takes up like 2 minutes of episode 16 that replaces some of Kuro Sensei's teacher's screen time. Which is a pretty bad idea because that time with her was needed so that we can invest even more into her so that her death has a strong emotional impact. And even if you do not agree with me on that point, you have to admit that the shortened time spent on each arc causes a few plot holes. In the Reaper arc, Kuro Sensei is captured due to him not being able to immediately fly and go immediately into Mach 20 speed. This is cut out, which ends up making a person who has never seen the show before wonder why Kuro Sensei doesn't just fly away from the pitfall trap and instead decides to use the tentacles to climb his way back up. But despite all of these flaws, this does not necessarily mean that this anime is not worth watching, however. Because despite how rushed this adaptation is, the moments when they actually decide to not follow the manga and it works is completely worth watching it. For example, when Class E goes into their final academic battle against Class A, it is so beautifully done, especially the scene where Karma saves Class E from one of the harder test problems, because you can feel how hard the test is by hearing all of the gunfire, dust, and shaking cam going around. And not only that, but another amazing scene was the brutal scene of Kuro Sensei just straight up murdering people on screen with his tentacles, which fantastically shows how brutal Kuro Sensei was and how if he were to go outside in his current state, the world would be in trouble without any of the narration from the manga. And also probably the most satisfying opening theme, Goodbye Yesterday, which just goes over all of the teacher-student relationships and Kuro Sensei's effects on his students all in less than 2 minutes, along with the fitting music behind it being so excited like the other OPs, but still having a more relaxed tone to it to help signify that this is their final season. So in conclusion, I personally think that in order to watch the Assassination Classroom anime, just watch the first season, and then go read the last battle between Naix and Takuoka, simply because they actually explain how the Nekodamashi works, and because it is used quite a bit throughout the story, and it might bother you if you continue reading without really understanding it. And the few chapters that the first season of this anime skipped over, simply because more Assassination Classroom for you, and of course the rest of the manga where the anime leaves off. And then if you still want to, and you probably will, after all this is a great manga, watch the anime. And with that out of the way, I am now signing off.